My name is Chase Howard. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Hemp Foundry. We're also known as EDI, located in Steamboat Springs. We also have a location in Monier, Illinois. I got into this industry for a multitude of reasons. Namely, it's my passion. It has been for about 10 to 12 years. But I also did lose my sister to lupus, and CBD and cannabis were a huge part of her life during the last couple months of her life. And so I think being on the cutting edge of R&D and understanding what this plant and the cannabinoids that are within it can really do is something that I want to infuse into my life and make sure that I kind of, carry that on for her. So.
Abe?
My name's Abe Ramanizadeh. I'm one of the co-founders of Leafball Botanicals, and we're based in Steamboat Springs in Colorado. And similar to Chase, I got into the industry after seeing CBD and hemp in general help several people in my family tremendously. My mom has rheumatoid arthritis, so does my grandma, and my sister has epilepsy. It's impacted them tremendously. It's given my sister freedom to drive, get a driver's license, things she never thought she would have. So it's something I want to help, get out there as much as possible and doing it right, because I think that's one of the things this industry needs some help on long term.
Greg?
I'm Craig Nandu. I'm with JBK Wellness Labs. We are a custom manufacturer based in San Diego. We've been contract manufacturing for about 10 years. We've been working with CBD since 2012. And so in those early days of CBD, there was a lot more unknown than there is today. But we chose to get into the industry because we saw some of the incredible benefits that people were receiving. At that time, it was really children with epilepsy. And some of our clients wanted to explore the CBD industry, and now some of those clients are some of the biggest in the space, starting back then. But we are a custom manufacturer, so we don't particularly offer white label products, but some of our clients do that order from us in larger quantities.
Derek?
Hi, I'm Derek Duchesne. I'm a Chief Growth Officer at EcoGen Laboratories. Similar story to most of the gentlemen up here. I discovered CBD about 6 years ago. My mother has had ovarian cancer, fibromyalgia, and MS for half of my life. For 15 years at doctor's offices, and an oncologist, neurologist, cannabinoids and CBD and cannabis was never a part of the conversation. Once we discovered that 6 years ago, she discovered it, changed her life. Started a company then called Healing Ventures, which was a marketing and supply chain company for brands looking to add CBD into their products. From that, I went through every processor back in 2016, 2017 that there was, and ran into a lot of manufacturing issues that I wish I never knew anything about. From equipment breaking to the lack of good genetics and biomass, et cetera, on the processing side, which led me to EcoGen Labs. And I was a customer of theirs for 2 years, and now I am a partner at the company. We do everything from equipment manufacturing for processing. We develop our own genetics. We have about 1,000 acres of our own farmland, 413 of our own, about another 600 of partnership farms. Processing and raw materials is really our core strengths, and we do about 80 different SKUs on private label and white label manufacturing.
And Jason.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jason Hastings from Centuria Foods. We're located in Carson City, Nevada. I'm their Senior Director of Science and Manufacturing. I actually got into the industry not as noble of an entry as the other gentleman up here on the board. I came from the dietary supplement world, manufacturing, so I came as a subject matter expert to try and build a manufacturing environment that would meet the GMPs, especially with the new 117 out now, just to make sure that companies in this space are producing properly and protecting themselves and their customers and consumers. So that's how I got into this environment here. Centuria Foods does anything from R&D efforts. We have a few water miscible formulas, some powder production. A lot of what we do is ingredient manufacturing, but we also do white label as well. So we throw it in there. So all the way across the board, we have a lot of applicability to this session here. So thanks.
Okay, so one of the things that we talked about before we came over here, when we were over in the green room, is the fact that, and I am not trying to insult anyone here, but you don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of things that people like Jason at the end, with all of his years of experience, knows that he can share and that all of these gentlemen can share with you. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about, to hopefully you know all these, but just in case you don't, as a little eye-opener here, is what are the biggest mistakes that you see small independent companies making in the industry? So Chase, you're first.
Well, that's kind of a big question because there's a lot of mistakes to make.
Choose your first. We got 5 people.
But I would say when it comes down to a brand just starting, compliance and really knowing what you can and cannot do is the biggest mistake you'll make. And that's why coming to a white label manufacturer is helpful, because we go ahead and do all of that heavy lifting and hard work on the front end. Let me give you a quick example. I know everybody in this room probably knows, but you can't make statements about CBD. You can't make claims. You cannot say that it works for lupus. You can't say that it helps, remediate the issues associated with lupus. You just can't. So a lot of brands that hit the scene, they think, you know what? We're going to say it relieves anxiety, relieves stress. You put those on your bottle, and before you know it, you're going to have a huge, huge problem with the FDA and all other regulatory bodies. So coming to a white label manufacturer kind of allows you to step over those stones and understand the process as you go, but have somebody in your corner that truly has already been through the ringer.
Abe?
Yep, so picking a different one, I would say, especially if you're going the white label route, one of the biggest mistakes people make is not properly diligencing the people that they're going to have white label their products. You should be asking them for COAs, you should be asking them for a site visit, you should go see the facility, make sure it's not dirt everywhere, that things are being manufactured properly. You'd be surprised what you would see at a lot of the facilities around the country. So I think it's very important for all the brands out there to, yes, you do need to rely on the white label partner that you have that's going to make your products, because they're going to help you bridge a lot of the gap in knowledge. However, you do need to have at least a basic understanding so that you can diligence them properly and make sure that you're picking the right partner.
Greg?
Yeah, I tend to think a big part of it is clients having unrealistic ideas of speed to market. And so I think when you're talking about white label, certainly, you can have speed to market. I know that we'll probably get into some drawbacks of full-on customization versus white label because they've both got their benefits and their drawbacks. But I think that speed to market's a big thing, and some of the things that these gentlemen just talked about are, getting up and running so fast that you're not checking the claims that you're making or having those verified. Those are some things that can get you into some trouble.
Derek?
To double on what Craig's saying, it's as a brand, understanding what your lead time and routes, speed to market. A lot of people are like, I need these products yesterday, and really, if you're trying to build a brand and specific hero products, private label is probably going to be with custom formulations, custom packaging, that sort of thing is going to be, a route that a lot of people want to explore, but they think that, getting a white label option, something that's off the shelf, that's ready in X amount of hours, is going to be the quickest route to market, but also not going to, the brand development and thought, may not be there. I think a big mistake that I'm seeing with a lot of these newer brands, or over the last 2 years at least, is, it's not 2016 anymore where you can create a tincture and gel cap company and think that you're going to do great things. I'm sure that you can, but really the way that the market's heading and the way that the markets have opened up for every industry, that that I don't think that yes, CBD is an incredible hero ingredient, but I think you need to look at really building a brand and not a CBD brand. Look at when CBD is in everything. And you stop seeing CBD on the labels for things. Really, what is your brand position? Who are your customers? And who is your target audience? So I think really building your brand for longevity and not so much as a CBD brand.
I strongly agree with that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to build on that a little bit. One of our frustrations that we see with a lot of people coming to us to get their brand out there, to get their product out there, is they do not have a clear idea of the product they want. What kind of jar? What's the packing material? What kind of cap do you want? What's your serving size? What's your label going to look like? No idea. It's a good idea to sit down, start thinking of those. That way when you go to your white label partner, you do get a product out there fast. You have an idea of, I want full spectrum, broad spectrum, isolate. What do you want inside your product? Already thought, serving size, dosage, all of that jazz. And the next bit, I believe Abe brought it up with the GMPs a little bit. You should go and audit the facility. You should sit down and talk to them. If you go online and just type in GMP audit checklist, you'll get a great checklist you can print off, go to their site, and start looking at them. Go down the list. Do you have a quality management system? How do you manage CAPAs? How do you manage customer complaints? Ask those questions. Those are reasonable, basic information that any manufacturer should have in any space here. So just make sure you do your diligence. The next thing is always look and make sure that they're third-party audited by some sort of auditing body, NSF, SQF, ISO. This proves that they have a quality management system and someone else with experience vetted them. So simple things like that can go a long way. Okay?
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And so right there at the bat, you've already got a checklist of things that you might not have thought about in your own brand and making your own brand. One of the things that Jason had brought up a little bit earlier was, like when he introduced himself, is these companies have a myriad of products. They have all sorts of different things that you may not have even thought of. And then all of a sudden you can incorporate them into your brand. So it's just opening a door to just products, to excellence in manufacturing. And then the other thing that he had mentioned also was customer complaints. So when you get someone who's calling saying, oh, this did this or this did that, it's nice to have the manufacturer there to back you up and to take the adverse event paperwork if that's what they're doing, or however you guys decide that's going to be resolved. But to have your manufacturing partner, and I say partner for a reason because it is a relationship, there to support you it just takes a level of stress off of you that until you've experienced it, you don't know. It can be painful. So along that line, what type of value adds do you guys as a white labeler, like but like the things that we were just talking about here, what do you offer your customers other than just making a product? So how about we start with Greg on this one?
Well, I think now's maybe a good time to touch on white label versus custom manufacturing. And so white label can be really, really good for you. A lot of times we'll get calls from companies that say, oh, they'd like to buy 250 pieces or 500 pieces. And for us, that's significantly below the levels that we can manufacture at, because when you understand manufacturing, there's processes, there's costs, there's testing that has to go into the product up front. And so you can white label a product and you can get, there may be some companies from these gentlemen up here as well as others, but they'll carry units of a certain type of product on their shelf, whether it's a 500 milligram tincture, and they might have 10,000 on the shelf, and you can say, I'd like to buy 250 and put my label on it. What you'll know is that if you've vetted them properly, that the testing's been done, their GMPs are in place, and that can be very helpful for you. Now, when you're looking at the long-term growth of your brand, sometimes people would like to have a custom formulation. So what that means is when you work with a company that works on custom formulations, you might say, look, we're looking to develop a certain skincare product. And you want to have your stamp on it when you take your brand to market, and you're looking at 5 years down the road and people start asking about your product, how it was made. You know that you've been part of the development process. And when we talk about what we do is the ability to take ingredients that exist, create a customized formula for you. And so the drawback of white label is that you're using a formula that's already created by somebody else. The benefit is that it's available and it's ready to go, and a lot of the details have been buttoned up for you. So, when you're looking at your products, I think those are some of the considerations to take into account.
Abe?
Yeah, I think one of the things I would add to that is, I think especially if you're just starting a brand, and even if you've already been selling for a while, when you're looking for a partner, I think you need to identify the weaknesses you might have and something where a manufacturing partner may be complementary to you. So like for us, we take education and helping brands understand the products very seriously, and we help walk them through extraction, processing, manufacturing, some of the different value adds of certain components of the product, why we use certain ingredients besides the CBD, the cannabinoid terpenes. And if that's something that's valuable to you, you should look for a manufacturer that's can sit down with you, educate you, help you answer questions. If customers come with you and ask questions you don't know about, they can help you answer them. And then speaking to the custom formulation piece, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it's important when you're looking at the long term, understanding that one, the custom formulation piece is important, and then two, understanding that that's going to take time. And the way we help people with that is we have some folks that come to us, they have a formulation already dialed in. This is exactly what I want you to make for me. I had a consultant develop this formula. And we have other folks that say, hey, I want to incorporate these types of ingredients, and then we can work with our product team to come up with a formulation that meets those needs. And that part, may cost a little more, may take a little bit longer, but it is something that I'm sure a lot of us, would be able to help people with. And I think it's understanding what your needs are, and then you can intentionally look for that in a partner.
Jason.
Yeah, so what our company offers for white labeling or bright stock is peace of mind. Of course, our quality systems are built. Anything that you purchase, you can get C of A's from where the hemp was grown to how it was tested out in the end. We have on-site laboratory doing, in a single pass injection, doing 14 cannabinoids. So we can give you a 14 cannabinoid profile of your material with a C of A. Before it releases, we send to a third-party lab following FSMA. You must test at an ISO 17025 lab, third party, not your own. So we do that. That comes along with your purchase. Going off of Craig's mention of white label, how you're just pulling something off the shelf pretty much. Yes, we have our bright stock. We can then print your labels on site, because it's something that sets us apart from some other people is that we can print it and put right on a bottle immediately, so we can ship it out usually pretty quick. Okay, custom formulations do take a little longer than that. So when it comes to partnering with the white label there, just know that a lot of the costs, if you're not trying to find your own custom formulation or market differentiator, are thrown into large volume orders. So that testing cost gets rolled in. The staging, all of the prep testing, intermediate testing, all gets rolled in with these large volume order runs. So that's why it's so cheap. So if you're trying to get 250 bottles, the cost goes up drastically per bottle. You go from probably $6 a bottle down to $1.50 a bottle if you're trying to just do white label. So just keep that in mind.
What about stability testing and stuff like that?
We usually, we can be sourced to do it. Stability testing takes a long time. We will usually put that onto our customers to look at because it's based off packaging componentry and formulation, right? So if you went from a dropper bottle and you want to do a shooter without a dropper in a plastic container, that's a different stability. And so what we say is we'll put manufacturer date on there if you do not have data. If you do have data, we're happy to put an expiration date. That's the only difference.
Of course, if it's a white label, it's already been done.
Yes, if it's white label, we have that data to show how long it's going to last, so we don't
Chase?
require it.
So I think the question was, just so I can, because we've been down the line. And
Value added.
Yep, so value added. So our CEO and visionary, John Kelly's sitting in the room, and he's got a statement he likes to say, which is from seed to stomach. And that's really what you get when you come to our home, is we have tried to own the whole process, from the time the seed is planted in the ground until it makes it into that tincture bottle and goes into your stomach or into the gel cap or into the peanut butter or what have you. And so the beauty of that is that our team, everybody on our team has a specific role that they're playing to help every single brand formulate exactly what they need. So let's say you do want to white label and you want to go with a formulation we already have in-house, but you happen to have questions that are more strategic. You want to understand, how do I get this to market? What avenue do I want to run down? Well, I'd send you to Abe, because Abe owns the biggest brand that lays under our house, and we are partnered with him. So Abe can help you run that along, spitball ideas off of one another. So at the end of the day, we're not just a white label manufacturer or just a processor. You know, one of our tolling partners is sitting right next to John at this moment. So we also toll biomass into crude oil and then further down the line to distillate and isolates. So pretty much anything you need to do in this industry, we can either do it in-house or we can send you in the right direction. Because I'm going to be honest here. We don't know everything. Nobody does. And you also, like we said at the beginning of this, don't want to reinvent the wheel. So as you're getting your brand off the ground, let us help. Let anybody on this stage help. Because it'll help you get that product to market that much quicker. and it'll help make sure that you're compliant, you're on the right side of the fence, and that you really know what's going to be on the shelf at the end of the day for your client.
I think there's something else to add into that, which is if you're looking at your brand, and I forget who it was, but mentioned looking at the long term, and if you're looking to expand internationally, there's also some key considerations there because we have manufacturing in Europe as well, and so Europe has very different regulations when it comes to different ingredients. And so when you're talking about your brand and you're talking about, some of the ingredients that you'd like to combine, at JBK, before CBD, we're an herbal company first. And so we've been working with botanicals for a long time. And some of the botanicals that we're able to use in the U.S. are not able to be used in Europe, for example. And so those are things that you have to consider. And it doesn't have to do with safety, but some of the ways the rules are written, if it was used prior to this and there's record of it, then you can use it. But Europe's got different regulations, and also Japan does as well, especially on the skincare side. And so as you're coming to formulate your product, those are some considerations you want to take into account if that's something that you'll be considering.
All right, Derek.
Similar to what what Abe and Craig were both saying is, as far as longevity of where you're marketing your brands and your products, Japan's a great example. Japan is kind of where the United States was 5-6 years ago for processing raw materials. You have to send your flow charts that you're extracting only from seed and stalk. It's a pretty interesting kind of vetting process in a lot of countries that have opened up this year. There has to be 0.000% THC, not a broad spectrum, not a non-detect, 000 THC. So when you're building out and doing your products for longevity and distribution and which markets you're going to go after, I think that's a very, very crucial point. I think a differentiator from EcoGen as far as a manufacturing standpoint is we do everything in-house. So we've been developing our own phenose strains and our own genetics for the last 6 years. We manufacture all of our own equipment. We build out all of our own processing equipment because when machines break, and they do break quite often, instead of a 2-week to 2-month downtime, we have a 2-hour downtime. When it comes to our raw materials, our R&D department is phenomenal. So it's we don't look at ourselves as a hemp or CBD company. We look at ourselves as a hemp-derived specialty ingredients manufacturer. So, CBG is now taking a big lead this year. I see, as genetics and technologies improve to bring these other cannabinoids to market, I think, CBC, CBN, CBL, these are all going to be, very much, part of the conversation next year. As 4 years ago, CBD isolate was what, $20,000 a kilogram, and now it's $2,000 a kilogram. CBG last year was $50,000 a kilogram. Now it's $20,000 a kilogram. So as more availability comes to market and more research is done on these different lesser-known cannabinoids, things like THCV and things that have incredible pharmacological value, I think that we are really staying ahead of that curve, and you get basically you can come see our facilities and you can come see where the seeds are developed all the way through to where we're, doing your formulations for your finished products.
THCV is the one that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I can't make any claims on THCV, but from what I've seen and the research that's being done, and I encourage everybody to look into it. It's remarkable for damaged nerve tissues and that sort of thing. Yeah, so it's really incredible stuff.
See, I can say that because I don't sell any of it. So I don't get in trouble. One of the things that Derek just mentioned brings a question to mind that I think a lot of people deal with. You have a product and it works for someone, and they come back and it's like, oh my God, this is great, and they use it again and again and again, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. And so a lot of times it has to do with the consistency of the oil that you're getting or some of the materials that are going into that product. So Abe, how about you start us out? Just kind of talk about how your company deals with consistency in your products.
Yeah, and I think this is something any manufacturer you work with should be doing is you're testing every single batch. There should be multiple spot checks in every single batch to make sure product was properly homogenized, you know, each product is going to be fairly consistent. Obviously, not each individual unit is going to be tested, but definitely more than one should be. And I think this is one piece that, you know, we've definitely seen a big issue, and I'm sure many of you have seen the random spot checks universities, the FDA, and a lot of other people are doing of products straight off the shelf, where most of them, I forget what the number is, like 70% are mislabeled. And obviously that's a major issue for a lot of players in the industry, because if you're buying something and it's not what, you know, you thought it was, it's not going to help somebody. And
if your name's on it, then
Yeah.
that goes back on you.
Yeah, and the biggest recommendation I would make there is, if you're buying from a white labeler, don't just trust their COA. Get spot check a few of your own bottles and send those to get tested so you can confirm the numbers. Because if you just rely on them, you know, it's just as much your fault as it is anybody else's. So I highly recommend you do that and hold your manufacturer accountable. If you send that test and the numbers aren't matching, you need to go back and make sure things are done right.
Derek, you want to talk a little bit about seeds, strains?
Yeah, I mean, what would you like to talk about seeds? I could talk for days about seeds.
Well, so you guys have your own growth.
Yeah, so without the right genetics, you have nothing. Last year, 2016, 2017 especially, the entire United States ran out of biomass. The amount of hemp farms was, not anywhere near what it is today. But the entire country ran out of biomass. So without having the right genetics, you have nothing. That's the foundation of this industry. And traditionally, hemp was grown for textile, for fiber, for all of these things, not cannabinoid and terpene profiles. So a lot of these, as a processor, do you want to be processing something that's 5% or 15%? It's going to take 3 times as much material. So and this year especially, you're seeing so many lawsuits that are happening. And say you're buying a raw material, right? You're buying isolate or distillate, and you test it a week later. You know what you're getting. You have your microbials, your pesticide tests, your heavy metals. With genetics, it's really a trust buy, because if you see the feminization test from Eurofins, or a great testing facility, or germination test at 100% fem and 100% germ, that's done on such a small scale. 100 seeds, 1,000 seeds? When you're doing hundreds of acres and millions of seeds, those numbers, 1% of males in your crop can ruin your entire crop, and your neighbor's crop can ruin your crop. So having, a lot of these farmers, you're not going to know if you got good genetics until a month before you're bankrupt. So I think having an incredible, understanding of, it's not finding it through these third-party, kind of systems and companies, or if they are having the correct paperwork and accountability behind it. And we're working on something that we're announcing next week. So, and we'll announce it now.
Just announce it now.
Yeah. So we're working on a strain that we've been working on for quite some time. That's kind of like a seedless watermelon-esque kind of thing. So as the industry grows, cross-pollination is going to be, a huge issue in a lot of these states, especially in the Midwest and the windier, states and flat states. And so we're working on a strain that can only pollinate itself. So you can put it in the middle of, a bunch of different marijuana or hemp farms, and it's not going to be able to be pollinated. So we're very excited to be rolling that out.
Nice.
Interesting. I've got something to say just on that note specifically. Is just as Derek was saying, for the farmers, they've got to trust. But I think also for all of you who are looking to manufacture products, whether they're white label or they're custom manufactured, I think you still have to, one of the boxes that you've got to check is who you're working with. We've talked about the GMPs and that process, but even despite those things, there's other things that you have to get a good feel for who you're working with. You have to trust them, because it's not just the product itself, but it's the process. And so you want to trust them enough that as you go through the process, some of the things that you're being told are going to be followed through on. And there are some manufacturers out there that will promise the world, and everything sounds great, but then when the rubber hits the road, it doesn't work out quite that way. And so, spend some time getting to know the people that you're working with, even before you go into the actual product phase.
Yeah, just to quickly add to that, I think I imagine it's prevalent in every industry. I feel like it's especially prevalent in this one, where people overpromise and underdeliver. And I think you need to make sure, and this is part of the reasons it's important to go see facilities, to get a feel for the person you're working with, the team. Don't just rely on the head guy that's shaking your hand. Talk to some of the employees. Like, how do people feel about what they're doing? Because it is probably one of the biggest things I've seen where we've had folks that, you know, we weren't able to compete with somebody on price. They come back 2-3 months later, it's like, yeah, that person didn't deliver because they promised something that just was not achievable. And we knew we couldn't do it, but somebody else may tell you, oh yeah, no problem, I can definitely do that. And then it's not really feasible.
Yeah, I think that price is one thing, but also timelines as well, because you know, it's very, very common that people will come to us and they want a custom formulation, they want to launch their product in 4 weeks. And there's a lot that goes into it. 4 weeks is actually, you know, extremely short. It can't be done. And so they have the incredible experience of going and working with somebody else who says, oh yeah, we can do it. And the product gets out to market. Something turns out to be junk. And then, you know, they're already in it for thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe in some instances hundreds of thousands of dollars of product that is no longer good. And you don't want to be in that situation where you come back and say, oops, I was wrong, because it can be an expensive mistake.
Yeah, and I'll give you one specific example where I've seen that is somebody will say, I want a 250 milligram full spectrum hemp extract product. The COA arrives and it's 250 milligrams of hemp extract, not CBD, and the formula, what the brand actually wanted was, I do want full spectrum hemp extract, but I wanted 250 milligrams of CBD, which obviously is grossed up to a bit more of actual full spectrum hemp extract. And the difference there, one, price, and your finished product that is no longer what you expected it to be, is fairly significant.
Then along that lines, you're not going to have a test for hemp extract.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't quantify hemp
Exactly.
extract. You don't know everything that's inside there. You wouldn't be able to test all of it.
Exactly.
So that's a challenge. When it comes to building trust, a good friend of mine, Dr. Eric Williamson, always used to say, in God we trust, all others bring data. So look at the data. Do your own testing, as they were mentioning. Going along the lines of testing with CBD, we did a 5-lab interlaboratory study where we sent out numerous samples to try and see what the variation was lab to lab for testing. And what we saw was every % increase in CBD was a standard deviation increase of 0.08%, okay? So that means if you had 100% CBD, you get an 8% swing on the results lab to lab. Just want to throw that out there, that just because one lab tests it and it seems like it's okay, another lab might come low, but remember, 0.08 is the standard deviation. So multiple lab testing, make sure that it's correct, accurate. Whenever I formulate, we always add overage to make sure that it's going to pass, it's going to last for the shelf life, just so you're not held like, in a year from now, someone takes it off the shelf and tests it, and now you have a lawsuit because you're not meeting label claim. That's not what we want to do here.
Yep.
The last thing I want to add is that as a consumer goods brand, whether you're in the CBD space or not, the biggest capital expenditure you're going to make is into your inventory. So when you are creating your brand, whether it's through a private label fashion, a white label fashion, custom formulation, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself the question, am I willing to put operating capital that I can pay my employees and pay my bills with on the line to produce this product? And I think it was Craig that said it. It's the product, the process, and the people. The people is the one that I really care about, and it's the one that you guys should really care about too. There are a lot of bad actors in this space. They're everywhere. The brokers are snaking around in the grass, and there's nothing wrong with brokers. Let's just get that straight. But there are brokers that do know and try to take advantage of you. And especially when you're starting out, and this does not just relay to the CBD industry. Be very careful about how much capital you tie up in your first couple purchases of inventory, and be very careful about who you give those purchase orders to, because that is your lifeline in the beginning. And your first 6 months of runway, that inventory is your lifeline. If it turns out to be a bust, you can pretty much kiss your brand goodbye, unless you have a bunch of capital sitting around, and then in that scenario, you might be okay. But just make sure you trust the product, the process, and the people, and understand that this is a huge expenditure you're making, and it's tied up in inventory until you sell it. So, got to go to the right people.
Yeah. And your brand is an extension of you, and so you want to make sure that it reflects who you are. You don't want to put trash out there. So, okay. One of the things I do want to talk about right now that I think is really important to you as retailers is cost efficiencies. So yeah, if you make your own product, you have a certain margin. But there are certain cost efficiencies that come into play when you're working with a white labeler. And, you know, it's not just the support, it's not just the partnership, it's not just the access to products that you never even considered, like water soluble or powder or whatever. So who wants to just touch on cost efficiencies of white label products?
I think we should let Abe run with that.
I think Abe should, Mr. Wall Street should do this one. Actually, he was in Wall Street, so yeah.
I think on my side there, one of the big mistakes I see a lot of people make when they look at white labels, like, oh, I can do it cheaper. And a lot of times what you're doing is you're forgetting a lot of the expenses that, you know, you don't realize are there. Lab testing, cleaning and setting up, all those hours that you're spending, you know, doing a bunch of, what's your time worth? You know, if you assume you're worth nothing, then, you know, maybe it is cheaper, but if your time is worth something, you know, that adds up. It's time you could be spending selling the product, setting up the web, whatever, all the other things you could, you know, that you have a higher core competency in. But, you know, what I would say, what we do, and I'm sure what several of the other, you know, other companies do, I'm sure our peers, you know, we constantly track the market. We're looking at what pricing is, what's the average retail price for 1,000 milligrams, 2,500 milligrams, 500 milligrams, and we're making sure that our white label pricing, even at the MOQ level, gives you that ability to sell retail. So you're 25% of typical retail costs so that we know that you can get into the market and still go to a retail store where you have the keystone price and lose 50%, give away some free product, and some of the other things that come with it. Because sometimes I think white labelers just randomly price. You know, it's like they're not taking into account, hey, what is my brand partner going to be doing with this? Because if you're selling online and you don't have some of the, you know, I'm getting haircut 50% right from the start, maybe you can eat, you know, a higher cost if you're not paying a big amount to affiliates. But if we know most people are looking to try to go retail, we make sure we're pricing where, and that's something you should take into account too. It's like, hey, go to stores, look at 1,000 milligram tinctures, look at 1,000 milligram creams, look at 1,000 milligram, you know, edible products. What are those priced at? If I'm paying my white label or $20 for a $60 product and I have to go retail, it's going to be tight. So I think those are the things that, you know, we definitely help with, but it's something you should also bring to the table too, so that you're not in a situation where it sounds cheap because you look at a market, it's like, oh, that's selling for $60. If I'm buying it for 20, that's not bad, but you're forgetting the 50% haircut you're going to pay immediately, and it's really only $30, and that doesn't include all your other expenses.
Yeah, I think that I'll touch on that too, because I think it's very important that you know your market. I'll talk specifically on the skincare side, even, you know, whether it's a CBD product or not. We've got clients that are carried in CVS and Kroger, and they need a certain price point. So when they come to us, we have to understand that in order to create the right product. If we make a product that's going to put them out of the market, you know, from the get-go, everybody's wasting their time. And so we also have clients that are carried in Neiman Marcus and high-end Four Seasons spas, for example. And so we have a little bit more leeway to put more combination actives in there, more concentrated extracts, for example. And so when you're going into it, I think when you start to have that discussion with your manufacturer, know exactly where you're going to be taking this product, because it's going to dictate what kind of product you're going to have, you know, in development.
And I just have one thing I kind of want to add to that. So as many of you probably are, I've been in startups ever since I graduated college, never went into the corporate world, so budgeting is a huge aspect of that. And a lot of times as founders or co-founders or first hires, we have to wear a lot of hats. And we assume that we can do a lot more than we actually can, and sometimes we just have to. We got to be agile and scramble to do everything that we can. But one of the things about white labeling and the benefit of that is that take care of the operations of the business. Take care of your big partnerships and your big clients. Take care of the things that you know how to do. Sell yourself, sell your brand. Let the chemists do the work that they know how to do. unless you are a chemist. If you are a chemist, then of course, be on the front lines of R&D in this industry and make a name for yourself and your brand and help propel this industry forward. But if not, then do what you're best at. Really take hold of that and champion that, and I promise you your brand will be 10 times better off. You know, a lot of people don't think about the expenditures of machinery that goes into creating a lot of these brands. You know, filling tincture bottles is not as simple as pipetting, you know, liquid into it.
Not when you're doing 10,000 a month.
Exactly. And Abe can tell you this firsthand. I see this man in the lab a lot until 4 or 5 in the morning. So, yeah. Point being, let the chemists do what they're good at. I'm not a chemist, so I'm not doing that. But the point is, do what you're good at. Operate your business, get it off the ground, make sure you can scale, make sure you can budget, and, you know, leave the formulation up to somebody that knows what they're doing, and make sure you find that right partner.
I wanted to add something really quick to what Craig was saying, because I think it's actually important in not so much, part of it is cost, price point you're expecting to have and everything, but also I think in increasing the likelihood of your success. I think if you're not being targeted and intentional with the market you're looking to get after, at least initially, carving out niche markets, I think you're going to struggle. You're going to blend in with the, 10,000 other brands that are launching at the same time. So like, I would be very targeted, at least initially, with where you want to go, because if you're being a generalist, it's going to be very difficult to compete with the players that have already established bigger followings or have much bigger, bankrolls to, I can fund losses for the next 2 years at very high levels, and you may not have that same luxury.
Yeah, and to what Abe and Craig are both saying, it's I think when developing your products, especially with efficiencies, working with one of the white label manufacturers up here, as opposed to people that haven't worked with CBD, there's a pretty significant learning curve. Especially a couple of years ago, you'd see products come out on the shelves, especially like topicals, that they think that you can add in a raw material or a different thing to it and mix it up, and then it's going to be there's CBD in it. Yeah, doesn't really work like that. The emulsification is different, stability is different, and so there's a lot of R&D things that you don't really take into consideration, because you think I'm going to add sugar into my coffee. Now it's now I've got sugar in my coffee, and adding CBD into your product isn't exactly the same thing. And to what Abe is saying is really figuring out and working with a company like Craig's, figuring out what your hero products are going to be and what what your brand story is, because every week I hear somebody like, I'm going to be the Coca-Cola of CBD. Like, Coca-Cola is going to be the Coca-Cola of CBD.
Yeah.
Yep.
So defining what your products are and really who like my suggestion to a lot of when people are looking to start brands is 1 to 3 SKUs, hero products. Really know what the problem is that you're solving and what you're targeting, and launch with that. Build that audience base, that customer base, and then start to expand your SKUs. A lot of these CBD brands that are out there, we offer 80 different products. When CBD brands aren't a thing anymore in a couple of years, what is your brand? So.
I love it, because this is where I get a little bit passionate, because
You got 2 minutes to be passionate.
2 minutes.
Yep,
All right,
thank
2 minutes.
you. We've got to wrap it up,
We should leave some
guys.
time for questions,
Because
too.
there is so much opportunity that still exists in the space. It's just you have to find the right avenues for it. It used to be that you'd come out with a tincture, 100 milligrams. Next week, somebody would come out with 500. Then it was 1,000, and that was the name of the game for years. But there's so much opportunity. So if you know that, like, the spa market, is an area that can be, you can dive into there. There's so much opportunity there. It's just you have to find your proper niche. Abe mentioned it before, but there is so much opportunity. So it's just getting started the right way, and you can find it.
So these gentlemen are going to exit whatever stage side that is, right, left, I don't know, I'm not a theater person, because I want you guys to have the opportunity to ask them questions. There was just too much information to get out there to you, for you to think about, to have time for questions, general questions. But hey, they're here, go talk to them, and find your partner.
Thank you for attending, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.